Hello everyone, welcome to another lecture on verbs. As we have already discussed that verbs may be of varied types and kinds, let us see that what makes the verbs different in different sentences. Now there are three sentences written on the screen. I will just read the sentences for you and then we'll discuss that how the verbs being used here are different in forms. Mr. Gupta is a doctor. We must pay our taxes in time. The earth revolves around the sun. Now for the first sentence, which is Mr. Gupta is a doctor, is a helping verb that is used here in order to just tell what tense are we using in the sentence. Or maybe you can say that it is a kind of a verb that is helping a sentence to make more sense when it comes to the subject and when it comes to relating the subject with the object. Second, we must pay our taxes in time. So here we have two verbs. One is must and the other is pay. Must is a modal. Modal is something that expresses, for example, here, must is a modal that expresses obligation, and pay is a verb which is a main kind of verb. Third sentence, the earth revolves around the sun. Earth revolves around the sun. Revolves here is the main action that the earth is doing. Therefore, we say that verbs may be of different kinds and it depends upon the usage of the verbs in the sentence as to what kind of a verb will be used where and how. This chart shows the classification of verbs. So verbs in broad category of maybe of two types, helping verb and the main verb. Helping verbs may be divided into further two categories, linking verbs and auxiliary verbs, wherein auxiliary verbs may be further classified as principal auxiliary, modal auxiliary and semi-modal auxiliary verbs. On the other hand, main verbs are based on object, they may be based on action or they may be based on past forms. So when it comes to the verbs that are based on object, we may have transitive and intransitive. When it comes to the verbs based on action, we may have dynamic or stative kind of verbs. And for the third kind, which is based on past forms, we may have regular or irregular kind of verbs. Let us discuss all these in detail. So the first classification of verb is the helping verb, and under helping verb the first kind we have is the linking verb. These linking verbs may also be termed as copular verbs. Now these linking verbs show equality or a change to a different state, which would mean that either they will state that the two things are common or equal, or they will state that there is a change that is happening from one form to another form. Now these linking verbs are mostly used intransitively. Intransitively would mean that we would not be having object in most of the cases. These linking verbs may be like be, seem, become, look, etc. A few examples of linking verbs which will make it very clear as to what exactly are linking verbs. The first example, Manisha is intelligent. Therefore, it states equality. Who is intelligent? Manisha is intelligent. So, Manisha is intelligent. That means there's an equality between the two, Manisha and intelligent, right? Mr. Gupta is a surgeon. So, who is Mr. Gupta? He's a surgeon. Again, equality. Rohit seems tired. Who's tired? Rohit is tired. Again, equality. So here, and likewise, Ashok sounds greedy. Who sounds greedy? Ashok sounds greedy. So for all these sentences, we can relate to the subject in the sentence with it could be a noun or it could be a kind of adjective. So who's intelligent? Manisha is intelligent. So adjective, tired, greedy, all these are adjectives. These are defining or probably quoting certain quality or characteristic or attribute of the subject. Therefore, linking verbs can be very conveniently termed as the verbs that relate the subject with the adjective. Likewise, they may also denote a change of state. The sky became dark. The sky became dark, like for instance, earlier on it was maybe it was not that dark, now it is darker. So the bread has gone stale. It was fresh at one given point of time. Now it has turned stale. So there's a state of change. There's a change of state involved from before to after. His body turned pale. Looking at a ghost, his body turned pale. Or maybe he was playing video game when his mother entered, so his body became pale because the next day was his paper and he had told that his mother, that I am studying. So because he lied, therefore when he got caught red-handed, he turned pale. So his body turned pale. What turned pale? Body turned pale. That means initially it would have been of some other color. Now it is some other. Therefore, there's a change of state involved, and such kind of verbs that allow you to identify this change are known as linking verbs or copular verbs. The second kind of helping verbs are auxiliary verbs. Now, under auxiliary verbs, the first is the principal auxiliary. Principal auxiliary may be of three kinds. They may be be kind. Be would mean is, are, am, was, were, will, shall, which will be used in a sentence to tell the reader as to what is the tense that we are talking in. What is the time zone that we are referring to? I am teaching you. So I'm right now teaching you. Am teaching you. It is present continuous. I was teaching you. So past continuous. I will teach you will be simple future. Likewise, they are playing. Again, are would mean that it is a plural entity that we have in the sentence. Similarly, shall word will be used when we are having either the first person, and this shall is a very dynamic kind of a word, shall, will, both. So these two words will be you finding them in principal auxiliary, and you will definitely find them when we are discussing modals as well. Therefore, will and shall here as primarily or principal auxiliary will be telling you about the tense. Likewise, have. So have also will tell you the tense. In case you have either the first person or you're talking about plural entities, we will be using have for the present or for the future tense. Like for instance, we have done our work, I have done our work, or they have done our work, anyway round. So first for the first person we use have, I have, and for the second and third person also we may use have also only when it comes to plural entities. For the first person, it has to be, for singular also we use have. I have done this. Likewise, he has. So whenever we are talking of singular entity in the present, we will use has. Whenever we are talking about the activities in past, we will always be using had, and had is used for both singular and plural kind of nouns. They had done it, he had done it, I had done it. Similarly, the do form. Do form would mean it will include do, did, does. Examples: I am your teacher. So I am your teacher would be simple present, present indefinite tense. Or I was your teacher will be simple past, past indefinite. I have done the assignment. I had done the assignment. So one is in present perfect tense, the other is in past perfect tense. The work is already over. It is finished, complete. I did not complete the assignment myself. Maybe I cheated, or maybe I asked somebody else to do it for me. So I did not complete my assignment myself. Past tense. Talking about the second category of auxiliary verbs, we have modals. Now, these modals are the kind of words that express necessity, advice, ability, expectation, permission, possibility, probability. It could be capability. It could be lack of capability, ability, or possibility, or probability as well. The one thing that makes these modals very particular is that whenever you are using a different numbered noun would be either singular or plural. These modals do not change when you change the subject from singular to plural or plural to singular. For example, you have a small table here on the right of the slide. We have a few pronouns written here on the left, and towards the right are three words written. Let us link the first pronoun with the sentence first. I can speak well. So can is a particular modal here that is expressing ability. You're able to do something, so I can speak well. The moment I change from I to you, and you here being singular, because you, if for single person also we are using you, and for plural entities also we are using you. So then we use you. So you can speak well. If we have he or she can speak well, he can speak well. We can speak well. You, if in plural ways, it also will be you can speak well, and similarly they can speak well. The main motive of doing this exercise and activity here is for you to know that whenever we are using a modal here is the word can, that is expressing the capability of a certain person or people. In that case, no matter what noun you have, be it a singular noun or a plural noun, or it could be any of the persons, first person, second person, or third person. This particular form of verb, which is a modal, does not change with the change in number or with the change in persons of pronoun. We may have different kind of modals like can, could, may, might, must, ought to, shall, should, will, would, etc. Now here the words like ought to, need to, must, these may sometimes be called as semi-modals. What are semi-modals? These are marginal modals. We'll be discussing marginal modals or semi-modals as and when we reach that slide. So for now, modals are the kind of verbs that do not change in form whenever you're using them for different kind of verbs. Also, they will express the meanings of necessity, advice, capability, ability, expectation, permission, possibility, determination, dare, etc. The next modal that we'll be discussing is the word shall. Now, shall, in the simplest of the ways, will tell you about the simple future tense. Now here, whenever we are using the word shall, always remember that for the first person, whenever we are using shall with the first person, it will always be expressing the simple future. We shall meet tomorrow, I shall meet tomorrow. I and we both are first person pronouns. Likewise, if you're using the word shall for second or third persons, they indicate some promise. They will never be used for simple future tenses. Simple future tense when used with second or third persons. Whenever we are using shall for second and third persons, they will always and always be indicating some promise. This shall be revealed to you tomorrow. I shall hand over my keys to you tomorrow. You shall inherit all my property when I die. So likewise, it is a kind of promise that the person is making using the second or the third persons. Also, shall can be used to make polite questions. Shall I take a leave? Shall I do this for you? Shall I get you a glass of water? Shall I not attend the class? So it could be any kind of a polite question that you're asking to a certain authority. Also, shall can be used to show obligation. Obligation is a certain kind of responsibility that you feel towards yourself. So the class representative should report to the class coordinator daily. It is giving out a certain obligation that the class representative has over the class coordinator. Modal that we'll be discussing is the word will. Now, will again is a primary auxiliary because it may tell you the tense. Also, this word will may be used as a modal. When used as a modal, it expresses for the second and the third persons, it expresses simple future. But whenever you're using it, especially for the first person, it may be used to show determination or intention behind doing something. I will attend all my classes today. So you're very strongly determined, or your intention is very clear that what are you up to. So I will attend all my classes today. Why have we put this example here is because generally we'll be using the word shall with the first person. The moment we are using the word will with the first person, it shows that this will here is not a primary auxiliary but a modal, because usually with the first person we'll be using the word shall for simple future sentences. So here will be used to show determination or intention, especially for the first person. Also, it expresses willingness to do something. We're going to the picnic. Will you join us? So are you interested in joining us for the picnic? So it shows the person's willingness. Also, it may express prediction. Prediction could be of three kinds. Specific prediction, wherein the time is very certain. The class will get over soon. You know that the class lasts for 55 minutes. If it is already suppose 10 minutes over, then you are sure that by the next 45 minutes, by the end of 45 minutes, the class will end. Therefore, it shows you a prediction, a specific prediction. The class will get over soon. The prediction could be timeless, wherein you're not very sure of the time when the things will happen, but it is still a prediction. So rain will ruin my picnic plans. If it continues to rain for a long time, of course my picnic plans will be ruined. So this again is a timeless prediction. Also, the third kind that we have under prediction will be habitual prediction. Habitual prediction would be this lake will get dry every summer. So you're making a prediction which is because you are now giving it a regular feature, a frequency every summer. Therefore, we call it habitual. So for all these cases, we can use will as a modal. The next modal that we'll be discussing is would. So the first thing that we need to understand here is that whenever we need to express willingness or determination in the past, we will always be using would as the past form of will. For example, for the previous slide, we discussed that for determination we use will. I will do my work today. But if you're quoting the same willingness for the past, I would do my work, right? So would is the past form of will when used as a modal. That is the simplest ways you can explain the word would. It expresses willingness, polite willingness. Would you please lend me your pen? So are you willing to lend me your pen? Instead of quoting it as are you willing to lend me your pen, or will you please lend me your pen, it is better that for politeness you use the word would instead of will here. Also, it expresses characteristic activity, customary or typical. Customary would mean again with frequency. After his classes, he would go home and take tuitions. So that's a custom. That's a custom activity. That is something that is very regular that the person is doing. Therefore, the usage of the word would. Typical or casual, she would cause the whole family to be late every time. So that's a typical characteristic of somebody or something. Therefore, for those two cases, customary and typical, we may have the usage of would for explaining or expressing the characteristic activity of something or someone. The word would also expresses hypothetical meaning. Hypothetical meaning would mean, for example, my Saint Bernard would weigh a ton if I let him eat what he wants. Would mean that if my Saint Bernard wants to eat all three big meals and the snacks time, and if I'm feeding him with a lot of meat, definitely he would weigh a lot. Therefore, with that kind of context, we are trying to say in hypothetically that if I feed him continuously and whatever in whichever time he wants, in that case, he will grow, his weight will become more. Therefore, my Saint Bernard would weigh a ton if I let him eat what he wants. So would here is a hypothetical kind of a word. It also expresses sense of probability. I hear a whistle, that would be the 3 o'clock train. So there's a probability that you're guessing that, okay, because it is the whistle, therefore it would be the 3 o'clock train only. So would may be expressing all these things when used as modal. Our next modal is should. Now, should is a word that expresses moral obligation. India should win the match. Moral obligation. You have a moral responsibility on your shoulders that you should do something. So, should, as we always say, that should is an ideal word. We usually should not be using should. In most of the parts of the world, should word is now almost obsolete. We usually don't use it because we treat it equal to the ideal word, and nothing is ideal here. Everything is very practical. Therefore, should is very minimalistically used in the sentences, but then when used, it may be used for moral obligation. India should win the match. You should marry because your parents are very old aged, etc. So it's a moral kind of a responsibility that you have towards somebody or something. It may also express liking towards something. I should prefer hot coffee because the weather is very cold, therefore I should prefer hot coffee. Also, it may express tentative opinion, something that is not very sure. I should have given it a thought before speaking. So now that you've already done something, but you're still thinking that tentatively you could have done something. So I should have given it a thought. It's a tentative opinion. Can happens to be a next modal. It expresses ability. Ability expressing word. For example, I can speak Latin or he can speak Latin, but he can't write it very well. So can here tells about the ability of a certain person. He cannot speak Latin is an absence of ability, incapability of doing something, right? The next is it may also be used to express permission, seeking permission or taking permissions. Can I take a walk with a friend? Right? So can and with compared whenever you're comparing the word can with may for asking questions, we'll say that can is less formal. Therefore, we always say that whenever you need to take permissions from any elder, any senior, you should always be using the word may and not can. Also, can is a bit authoritative. May is a politer, submissive word. If, for example, both the parties involved here in this lecture, you and me, if we are there in one class, if you want to go out, you will say that, ma'am, may I please go out? You can never say that you may can I go, because can is an authoritative word. When in class, a student does not have that kind of an authority as compared to the authority that is possessed by the faculty, by the teacher. On the contrary, if the faculty member wants to go out of the class in between of the class, he or she may use the word can. Can I leave the class? Because here the can shows that the person has an authority and it is just for the sake of taking permission. The person is taking permissions, otherwise the person has all the authority to do the task for which the person is asking for the permissions without taking the permissions as well. Therefore, for the softer version of asking or seeking permissions for doing something, you should always be using the word may and not can. Can I have a walk with my friends? It's an informal way, right? But formally, it has to be may. To express theoretical possibility, something that is very theoretical, practically we haven't really, we are not very sure of things to happen, but then theoretically, or maybe seeing the trends that the people or person has set so far, you can say that can word can also express possibility, which when it comes to theoretical possibility. Like for instance, Indian scientists can make a better vaccine of COVID-19 than others. Now, this is theoretical possibility. Practically, you never know who does it well and how soon somebody does that. But then theoretically, seeing the trend, seeing the quality of medicine and seeing the quality of medical aid in India, we can all, and of course the research behind it, we can always say theoretically that Indian scientists can do wonders. Therefore, say Indian scientists can make a better vaccine of COVID-19 than the other scientists in the world. Now, as would is the past form of will when it comes to modals, similarly, could is the past form of can when it comes to modals for expressing capability. To express capability in the past, I could always beat you at badminton when we were kids. I could swim 5 kilometers in, say, 10 minutes when I was 15 years of age. So it expresses ability but in the past. To express past or future permission or to make a polite request. Could I bury my pet in your backyard? You're taking a polite, you're asking for a favor, so it happens to be a very polite favor. Again, for that, you can have the usage of the word could. Could you provide me with the notes? Again, you're very politely asking for something. To express present possibility, we could always spend the evening walking on the beach. It's a possibility, but in the present tense. So suppose we are planning a trip to Goa, but there is a person who's saying that, okay, what will I do going there? So the other person is suggesting that we could always spend the evening walking on the beach. So it's a present possibility. To express possibility or ability in contingent circumstances. If he studied harder, he could pass this course, only if, that would mean, right? So for contingent circumstances, you can always have the usage of the word could. Modals like do, does, or did. So do in the simple present tense functions as an auxiliary to express a negative something and to ask questions. I don't study at night. So it's a negative sentence. She doesn't work here anymore. She's left the job, so she doesn't work here anymore. Do you attend the classes regularly? It's a question that the person is asking. Did you take the permission to leave the class? Again, a question. So do can be used to express any kind of a negative meaning or maybe to ask questions when it comes to simple present tense and modals. The do or does or did may also be used for asking yes or no type questions. The questions that may be answered in yes or no, you can always ask those questions using the word do. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Did you enjoy the last interactive class? The answer could easily be a yes or a no. Does he know uh, how to swim before he jumped into the water? So likewise, you can have the usage of uh, the word do, does, did when it comes to the modals. These three words may also be expressing similarity or differences. My mom likes roses and so does my dad. So if you see the green dot and just beneath that green dot, it is written used to avoid repetition. So what we're trying to do is, instead of saying my mother likes roses and my father likes the roses too, in place of that long lengthy sentence, what we can do is we can have the usage of the word does, do or did to cut them short, to make them precise, also that is to avoid repetition, also to show that there is a similarity that we're talking about. My mom likes roses and so does my dad. My mom does not like roses, neither does my dad. So it may show you similarity or it may also show you differences along with avoiding repetition. He bunked his classes, so did his best friend. So if you don't have this kind of a conjunction, that is so, and the word did, which is a modal here, you will have to make a sentence like he bunked his classes, full stop. His best friend also bunked his classes. So instead of using that lengthy sentence, what we do is we combine these two sentences using a conjunction and use the word did or do or any other form for that matter, depending upon the tense and the sentence, to avoid repetition. Also, this word do, does, did may be used, these words may be used to sound emphatic, to show that you're emphasizing on something. He never did understand his mother. You could have very conveniently have said he did not understand his mother. So but now having put the word never, it lays more emphasis. He did come to the party. He came to the party. It speaks enough for the sentence, but then he did come for the party would mean you're laying more emphasis on what he did and what he not, or maybe on his presence or his absence. So for sounding more emphatic, to lay more stress and emphasis on certain things, you may use the word do, does, or did. You may also have the usage of these words uh, for example, you're inviting somebody, so please do come for the party. It shows to the person you are inviting that yes, the presence of that person would definitely make a difference. Therefore, it lays more emphasis. Now the words like has, have or had. These words has, have, had as the primary auxiliary may be used to define the tenses of a sentence, like we've already discussed. But as a modal, they express probability or possibility of something. For example, as An affirmative sentence. He might have known about the gifts. Now, the important thing to be noted here is that whenever you're using the words like has, have, had for showing probability or a possibility, you will always have to use them along with some other modal. For example, might is a modal here. So he might have known about the gifts, expresses probability of that person knowing about the gifts. It may also express negative statement. He might not have known about the gifts. Again, we are using it with the modal might. So he might not have known about the gifts is a negative statement. To ask about possibility or probability in the past, could he have known about the gifts? For short answers, did he know about the gifts? I don't know. He may have. Expresses possession or experience. Now this is very important here, that these words like has, have, had as a modal may be used to express possession of something or experience about something. For example, I have had my lunch. So there are two words used here, have and had. We need to understand that have and had are two different form of verbs here. When it comes to have, it is a primary auxiliary, a principal kind of an auxiliary, which is telling you about the tense of the sentence. Had here tells you about an experience that the person has eaten the lunch. So instead of using the word eaten, it is the word had is used, which shows an experience. For example, I have had a car since I was 5 years old. So I have had a car. Have tells you it's a primary or principal auxiliary, which tells you about the tense that we're talking in. Had means a possession. So that means you've possessed a car since the time you were 5 years old. Also, it is not a mandate that you always will have the usage of have had. You may also have had had. I had had a car since I was 5 years old. This sentence would now mean that I had had a car. Maybe now I don't have it, but then I had. So it tells you past tense. The first had is the past telling word, that is the tense telling word, which is a primary auxiliary or the principal auxiliary, you may call it. And the other had, the second had, tells about the possession of something. So these three words may be used to express possession or experience as well when used as modals. Now we'll be discussing the modals may or might. So may or might. When used in the context of granting or seeking permissions, we may use the words. Might is the past form of may. Again, like will and would is the past form of will. Shall, should is the past form of shall. Can, could is the past form of can. Likewise, might is the past form of may. So whenever you're making any requests, you may use may. For present tense, you may use may. For the past, you could use might. Might is considerably more tentative than may. More tentative would mean may have still some kind of surety to it, but might lacks that surety. It is less sure of a word. May I leave the class? It's a polite form of asking or further permissions. It might rain if I say it may rain in the evening, means I'm more sure that it will rain. But the moment I say it might, means the chances of thing happening are very meager, very less. So whenever you have to sound very kind of more tentative, means less firm, you will always be using the word might. Also, might or may be used to express possibility. She may be the next class representative. Fair chance that she may become the next class representative. She might be the next class representative. We don't have much of chances, but then very few chances that she might be the next class representative. So may and might, the past and the present form. Also, might is the more tentative form than may. It has lesser affirmation, less kind of surety or definiteness attached to the word. Now we come to semi-modals. Semi-modals are also known as marginal modals. That means only by a certain margin they have been kept as semi-modals. Otherwise, they would be equivalent to modals. So you may always have these semi-modals put under modals. It would not make much of difference. Just to have a better knowledge of the verbs, we are putting this particular category as a very dominant kind of a category here. Therefore, these are marginal modals. These may be used as both main verbs or modals. For example, the words like have. You have words like have, which are used as primary auxiliary, which will tell you the tense. They also are used as modals, which then will express something. The words, whenever you are attaching an infinitive, that is the word to with it, now it becomes a semi-modal. Have to means must. Likewise, dare, need, ought to, used to, be able to, all these kind of words or verb phrases may be used as semi-modals. The first semi-modal that we'll be discussing is used to. Used to is a word where whenever we are speaking it, we don't usually lay emphasis on the D of used. It is used to. It sounds like used to, but when we write it, it is D word. I used to have chocolates when I was 15. Now I don't like them, but I used to, right? So expresses an action that took place in the past, perhaps regularly, but now that action no longer takes place. Regularly does not take place. So we used to go for international vacations every year until COVID-19. So until this February 2020, we used to always and always go for international vacations. Now that there is COVID-19 pandemic, therefore, we've stopped going. So there's an habitual action that we're talking of, which is no more into action. So therefore, we say that it is a kind of activity that is a leftover kind of activity. You know, no more doing it, right? So used to. So and whenever we are writing it, we'll write it as used. Whenever we are speaking it, we'll just speak it as we used to, right? Also, it expresses the sense of being accustomed to something or being familiar with something. I like these old sneakers. I'm used to them. So you get used to something, you get accustomed to something, or maybe you get acquainted with something, and therefore you may use the word used to for expressing such things. So whenever it comes to used to, you may have either some action that used to take place regularly or something that you're accustomed to. You would have always, all of you would have heard that song, which is chocolate, lime juice, ice cream, toffee. I've forgotten it myself. Okay, chocolate, lime juice, ice cream, toffee. पहले जैसे अब मेरे दोस्त हैं कहाँ, something like that. So that is how I used to like chocolates, ice cream, toffees when I was maybe a teenager. Now maybe I've grown mature and old, so I don't like them anymore. That is what the context here is. The next semi-modal rather, that we'll be discussing is ought to. Now, ought to again is a kind of obsolete semi-modal. We usually don't use ought to now, but then in general, you must know that ought to means what. So, ought to, whenever we are having the word ought to, it means that we are quoting any advice or opinion to something. For example, you ought to improve your communication skills. You ought to be sorry for what you've done. So it is a kind of obligation. Also, it is a kind of opinion that the person is having towards something, towards somebody. So ought to is an advice or an opinion. The word that expresses these two things is ought to. The next semi-modal is be able to. So it expresses ability. I am not able to understand the lecture. Incapability of doing something. Were you able to do the assignment on nouns? Did you do it? Or if at all you did, were you able to, or did you just copy it from somewhere? So it expresses ability or absence of ability, both ways. Next semi-modal that we'll be discussing is have to. It expresses obligation. I have to tidy my room this weekend. You must. It expresses obligation, showing the meaning must. Shows that something is unnecessary. I don't have to study today. It's a Sunday. So something that is not very important. I don't have to do it. Right? Next semi-modals are need to or need not. So they show obligation. They also may show something that is again unnecessary. I need to finish my assignment today. I need not finish my assignment today. I need not, you need not come to me. So something that is unnecessary or something, some kind of an obligation may be always represented using the words need to or need not. Okay, so perhaps the last kind of semi-modal that we'll be discussing is the word dare. Dare, when used as a main verb or an action, would represent the challenge. Somebody is throwing a challenge at you. That challenge is a dare, and that in that context is used as a main verb. So expresses challenge when used as main verb. I dare you to spend a night in the jungle, where The Hills Have Eyes was shot. So The Hills Have Eyes happens to be a movie series. So the jungle in which this movie was shot, I dare you to spend a night there. So it's a challenge that I'm putting, right? But when dare word is used as a modal, it expresses the meaning be brave enough to. How dare you sit without asking? Don't you dare comment on her. So don't you be brave enough to comment on her? How could you be brave enough to sit without asking? So for expressing the meaning be brave enough to, you will be using the word dare as a modal. So with this, we come to the end of this lecture, wherein we've discussed one of the forms of verb, which is helping verb. Under helping verb, we've discussed first the linking verbs, of course, and then the auxiliary verbs, principal verbs, modals, and semi-modals. Thank you so much for having patiently listened to this video lecture. In case you have any doubts or queries, you can note them down. In the next interactive session, whenever we'll be discussing all those queries of yours. Thank you so much. Have a good day ahead.